You won't believe what just happened in the last 24 hours on the Ukrainian front. Russia lost nearly 1,000 soldiers, dozens of artillery systems, and hundreds of drones in a single day. This isn't just numbers on a page. This is a story about what's really happening right now, and the scale of it is absolutely staggering. Before we continue, tell us in the comments where are you watching from. We'd love to know. So here's what we know. Between January 5th and 6th, 2026, Russia lost 940 troops in Ukraine, but that's just the beginning. Ukrainian forces also destroyed 46 artillery systems and an incredible 879 drones. Think about that for a second. 879 drones in one day. That's not just impressive, it's a massive technological and tactical victory that shows how modern warfare is changing right before our eyes. Now, let me put this into perspective for you. Since February 24, 2022, when this war began, Russia's total losses have reached numbers that are almost impossible to wrap your head around. We're talking about approximately 1,213,460 personnel. That's over 1.2 million people. Tanks, 11,512 destroyed. Armored vehicles, nearly 24,000. Artillery systems, over 35,000. But wait, because there's something even more revealing here. Look at those drone numbers again. Ukraine has destroyed over 101,000 Russian drones since the war started, and just yesterday they took down 879 more. What does this tell us? It tells us that Russia is throwing everything they have at Ukraine, including massive waves of unmanned systems, and Ukraine is finding ways to counter them effectively. Here's where it gets really interesting. The battlefield reports show 172 separate combat engagements in just one day. That's 172 times Ukrainian and Russian forces clashed, fought, and engaged in direct combat. The heaviest fighting? It happened in three main areas: Pokrovsk, Huliaipole, and Kostiantynivka. In Pokrovsk alone, Ukrainian forces repelled over 30 Russian attacks. 30 attacks in one direction in one day. Think about what that means. That's not a war that's winding down. That's intense, continuous pressure from Russian forces trying to break through Ukrainian lines. And yet, those lines are holding. In the Huliaipole direction, things were even more intense. Ukrainian defenders repelled 34 Russian attacks. We're talking about battles around settlements like Uspenivka, Solodke, Huliaipole, and several others. Russia even launched airstrikes on civilian areas, including Zaliznichne, Rizdvyanka, Ternuvate, and Vozdvizhivka. Now here's what many people don't realize. These daily losses add up to something extraordinary. 5 tanks destroyed in a day might not sound like much, but over time, Russia has lost over 11,500 tanks. 6 armored vehicles yesterday brings the total to nearly 24,000. Every single artillery piece, every drone, every vehicle represents not just equipment, but logistics, training, manpower, and resources that Russia can't easily replace. Let me ask you something. How long can any military sustain losses like this? Because that's the question everyone's asking right now. Russia's military doctrine has always relied on overwhelming numbers and artillery superiority. But when you're losing 46 artillery systems in a single day, and you've already lost over 35,000 total, that doctrine starts to crack. When you've lost 434 aircraft and 347 helicopters, your air support becomes limited. When you've lost 1,269 anti-aircraft systems, your ability to protect your own forces weakens. And those 73,000 vehicles and fuel tanks, that's mobility. That's supply lines. That's the ability to move troops, ammunition, food, and everything an army needs to function. But here's something that often gets overlooked. These aren't just statistics. Behind every number is a human story, a family affected, a community changed. War isn't abstract, even when we talk about military equipment. Every tank has a crew, every helicopter has pilots, every artillery system has operators, and on both sides, real people are experiencing the consequences of decisions made by leaders far from the front lines. The drone warfare aspect deserves special attention. Nearly 880 drones destroyed in one day shows us how the nature of combat has evolved. These aren't the massive bombers of World War II. These are smaller, cheaper, more numerous systems that can be deployed in swarms, used for reconnaissance, for attacks, for harassment. Ukraine's ability to counter them effectively demonstrates sophisticated air defense and electronic warfare capabilities. What does this mean for the bigger picture? Well, despite these massive daily losses, Russia continues to attack. Those 172 engagements show that Russian forces are still attempting offensive operations across multiple sectors. They're not pulling back, they're not giving up, they're pushing, probing, testing Ukrainian defenses, looking for weaknesses. But here's the critical point: they're not breaking through. Ukrainian forces repelled those 30-plus attacks in Pokrovsk. They stopped 34 more in Huliaipole. The lines are holding even under tremendous pressure. And that brings us to something important. Warfare isn't just about who has more equipment or more soldiers. It's about will, determination, tactics, leadership, and the ability to adapt. Ukraine has shown remarkable resilience and tactical flexibility throughout this conflict. They've learned to counter Russian tactics. They've integrated Western weapons systems. They've developed their own drone capabilities. They've turned defensive operations into a form of offensive action by inflicting such heavy losses. So what happens next? That's what everyone wants to know. The reality is that sustained losses like this affect military capability over time. Equipment can be replaced, but it takes time, money, and industrial capacity. Trained personnel take even longer to replace. Combat experience, unit cohesion, morale, these things can't be manufactured in a factory. Russia's continued attacks despite these losses suggest they're committed to their objectives, but the cost is becoming increasingly difficult to sustain. Meanwhile, Ukraine continues to demonstrate that defending your homeland provides advantages that numbers alone can't overcome. This single day's report, January 5th to 6th, is just one snapshot in a much longer story, but it reveals the intensity, the scale, and the human cost of this ongoing conflict. It shows us that this war is far from over, that the fighting remains fierce, and that the outcome is still being decided every single day on battlefields across Ukraine. The numbers tell part of the story. The courage, sacrifice, and determination of those fighting tell the rest. You've been listening to The Military Point. Stay sharp, stay informed, and we'll catch you next time.